Hello and welcome to the fourth educational mini-series provided by and presented by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. My name is Ann Bartlett. I'm the Manager of Community Outreach and Education for the agency. Our fourth educational series focuses on aging programs and services. And the other segments, we've covered a variety of programs and services that are available to seniors in our community. We've talked about transportation, we've shared some information about services such as Meals on Wheels, resources available to folks in our community, as well as some opportunities to attend programming, as well as senior community centers. Today's segment is focusing on services that are provided to someone in their home, and if you hear the terminology home and community-based services, that's kind of what we refer to in terms of that information in our agencies. I would like to first introduce our first guest today. Patricia Cortez is the the assessment supervisor for the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. So welcome, Patricia.
Thank you.
And I guess we really want to start when we're talking about specifically services that are provided into one's home through aging programs and services. Obviously, I think I want to start with the simple thing is, how do I even begin? And how do I begin? Where do I begin? Is really by calling our agency. So I'm going to ask that we put the number up that our Berks County Area Agency on Aging. You can give us a call at 610-478-6500. And upon calling our agency, you will talk to a receptionist who will ask you a few questions and then direct your call. And within our agency, the first stop beyond that is in our unit that we call our intake unit. Obviously, that means that we're going to take information in, asking a lot of questions to the caller so that we can best help you. And as we talked in all of the other segments that we've had, we've talked about that question and answer session is really helpful. It might be that you need a direction, you need guidance to do something. It might be you're looking for some resources. And then from there, it might be that you really need some of those services, some of the home care needs that you have, that we want to determine what that is to make a decision then to go forward from there. So I'm going to start again with Patricia. And so pretty much the intake workers who kind of do that call screening are going to be screening for some things. And pretty much when we're focusing on people's needs that they need in-home health care services, some of the questions they might be asking to narrow that down might be what?
They may ask in particular as to whether or not they live by themselves. They may ask in terms of what their basic needs might be, if they are needing some help with maintaining their home, if they themselves are feeling as though they're not able to go about their daily routine. Okay. Those might be some of the questions. They'll also screen for just basic income in terms of eligibility. That helps us in determining whether an individual may be eligible for some services down the road.
Okay. And I think we'll get into why we're asking some of those things as we process the information. So our intake person will do some of that screening, ask a lot of key questions, and then it kind of comes over to the assessment supervisor in that piece, because it sounds simple to me, but the word assessment says you're going to assess something, correct?
Correct.
So why do an assessment? If I call up and I say, hey, look, I'm 60 years of age, I'm aging, I'm 60 on up, 83, whatever, and I need help in my home. Mm-hmm. And, they've determined that. So
an assessment is...
Tell me about an assessment.
Yes, an assessment is just basically we are gathering and collecting information based on what we've received from perhaps the intake call or a provider that might have have sent a referral in, or perhaps someone that has walked in. Again, that goes through that intake process in our agency.
And while you said that, I'm going to interrupt just a second. So anybody can call.
Absolutely.
And say that I myself, as an older adult needing help, might call. A family member might call. You said a provider, another provider of services, or somebody that stops in and says,
A
hey, I think
physician
we
might
need
call
help.
our office,
Okay.
certainly.
All right. I wanted to make sure we all knew that anybody could really call and say this person needs services. Okay. So we would then decide.
What happens at that point is that we receive a written referral just based on all of that information that's been gathered.
Okay.
The individual must live in our county. Sometimes we do receive calls from people that live outside of the county regarding a concerned family member or friend that lives in the county, and that's acceptable as well.
Okay.
The whole assessment process is one in which we have 8 assessors who I assign to various parts of the county. The assessor then will receive that referral, and the referral basically is going to provide them with your contact information, certainly what has been expressed as to what some of the needs might be or what they may be wanting in terms of some additional support. That assessor will call the contact person. We do our best in terms of making sure that we are contacting the individual themselves, but sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes that individual might be compromised to where they're not using the telephone anymore. Okay. So we will call a family member or whomever. Our purpose for being there is to determine a person's eligibility for programs, both for institutions and, in this case, community, for program eligibility. And there are 2 outcomes. The person is either nursing facility clinically eligible, or a person is nursing facility ineligible.
Okay, so let's say that again. Nursing facility clinically eligible, in other words, would be eligible to reside in a nursing facility. But in case of the assessment and they choose that I want to stay home and receive those services, if that is the case and they're deemed that eligible, they could.
That's correct.
And then the opposite is nursing facility ineligible, meaning that really the level of the services that you need aren't the same as what you would need if you were living in a nursing home. So yes. Some of the funded programs then may not be they would not be eligible for those.
Correct.
Okay, got
Correct.
that. All right.
The tool that we use is a standard tool throughout the state.
And it's the assessment tool. It's not a tool, right? It's an assessment. So there's an operating tool, assessment pieces of paper that you're using to go out and assess for that eligibility.
That's correct.
Okay.
What the tool is referred to as the level of care determination
Makes
tool.
sense.
And it is a comprehensive tool which for most people, the assessment process, for the full outcome may last anywhere for 1.5 to 2 hours. The assessor might be in your home. Okay,
so it certainly is comprehensive.
It is very comprehensive.
Can you give us some pieces of that? What if I am a person that either is the individual that you're talking to assessing, so I know I need anywhere from that 1.5 to 2 or so. Can anyone else be there during this assessment?
Yes, as long as the individual that we're assessing is in agreement.
Okay.
We are very person-centered. We focus on the individual. If the person, when we get there, declines participating in the assessment, we will respect that. And we need to have the consent from the individual or their representative in order to do that.
To do the assessment, okay.
Yes.
To even do that part of it, okay.
We do need that. It's a comprehensive tool. So it starts just with all the information about you, the individual, where you live, and all of your pertinent information that we hold in confidence, and will move that information forward as the assessment process goes down the road. It also will ask specifically about your physician, for example. Then we will get into many of the body, the diagnoses with respect to the body. Now, this is all information that we're receiving from the individual and or the people that are there at the assessment. We will always follow up with a request to have the individual's physician complete a certification form, which is a one-page form that acknowledges that person has these diagnoses and do they feel that the person meets the criteria for nursing facility clinically eligible.
Okay.
The tool itself, as I said, is very comprehensive. It will cover many of the body systems, as well as a part within the tool that deals with your emotional status, your psychological status. We also run within the tool itself, the LCD. We will also initiate it's called a St. Louis University mental status exam. And we're only doing that for individuals that have not had a pre-diagnosis for dementia.
Oh, okay.
This exam, what it does is it gives us just these subtle symptoms if there is any kind of a cognitive issue that might be happening, and it allows us to provide with the individual's permission that information to your physician, because we do know that early intervention will help in terms of some of the stages of dementia.
Okay.
So that tool, that exam in itself is there are 11 questions that are asked of the individual, and there is a score that's at the end of that. All of these are all voluntary. The individual that we go to assess, if they decline participating in that, we will just bypass that. The tool in itself, obviously, the most information that we receive, if we can get the most overall comprehensive information for the outcome, it will allow us to make a better outcome for that
I would
process.
imagine, and I would also think that what you're assessing, you talked about the cognitive functioning, the medical conditions and diagnosis. How about and you said about daily movement through your life, in other words, daily activities. Are you talking about how does somebody maneuver in their life physically, as well as what do they need help with? What did they find that are their limitations that they're actually not able to do? Those kinds of things. Okay.
We refer to them as activities of daily living, and that involves all of the things that you do on a daily basis: getting up, getting yourself up out of bed, preparing a meal, getting yourself dressed and showered, grooming. Those are the kinds of things, and we really, again, to go back to, we try to have the individual that we're working with provide us with that information. Sometimes it's the family members that are wanting to, maybe they have a different perspective, but it is that certified assessor, this assessor that has a comprehensive overview of the individual. They're going in, they're not only gathering information, but they're also observing the environment as well. So there are many other observations that are drawn from that determination outcome that will either determine that person to be nursing facility clinically eligible or nursing facility ineligible.
Okay, so in a recap real quick, the intake came in, referred it to you, the assessor, the certified assessor goes into the home after talking with the folks. It's not like they just show up, they make an appointment, they ask the individual that they're assessing for permission that this is what we're going to do. They have an opportunity to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, or yes, please come in, I do need some assistance, let's talk about it. They can offer, they can have, if their choice is to have somebody with them, which is encouraged because of, I always say 2 heads are better than 1. We talk about it being healthy when we go to a physician and have 2 folks, so that when the physician gives you a direction or a new medicine, two of you can hear that, so that's always good. And then as a comprehensive assessment that's completed, they're kind of looking at the overall person, all of the ins and outs, the medical condition, what their capabilities are moving through daily life. You mentioned the cognitive, I assume nutritional aspect of all of that is very, and let me just ask one thing, and that assessment is not just used in Berks County, is that correct?
That's correct. This assessment is used all throughout the state.
Okay.
It is a...
So no matter what county I'm living in, so
yes.
therefore anybody who's in a different county and is reaching out to their area agency on aging and go through the process, they're going to be using that same tool that you talked about to do the assessment. Great. So we've determined that, we're looking at that, plus you mentioned the physician. You asked for an additional paperwork that really acknowledges that same status that you've kind of seen through the assessment.
And it's important to note that it's not always, there are times when a person we find has not established themselves with a physician. So
Okay.
if that's the case, then we refer that on for additional support to help that person acquire a primary care physician.
Which
so
is
that
good.
we can move
Okay.
forward in that. It's not that if you do not have a physician currently that you would not be able to work through some of the process. That's more or less where my my counterpart here helps us out a great deal.
And we'll get there in a sec. So if we've looked at that, and I think we also, you mentioned about whether it's, so you're looking at whether that person would be needing the level of care that they would normally get the services in a nursing home, but wanted in their own home to qualify for programs that are funded to provide in-home services. So that assessment, the reason to complete that assessment is so that I might be qualified for in-home services, and if I meet the eligibility both through the assessment, and then you mentioned a financial piece. There's a financial piece as well.
Yes.
Then meeting both of those will allow the individual to get some services in home that has been part of a program funded support
Yes.
for that program.
Our ultimate goal certainly is to have the opportunity to allow people to stay safely in their homes, and we will do what we can in order to provide that support system to allow them to stay home for as long as they choose.
Okay. And so this might be then moving over to Carol. So I'm going to quickly introduce Carol Lightfoot, my other guest for today's segment. Carol is the Care Management Manager for Berks Visiting Nurse Association, or BVNA, if I say that. And I don't know if this is where you come in, so I'm going to throw it back to the two of you. So we got that if they're eligible because they've met those criteria, gone through the assessment and the process. If they're not technically needing those skills of nursing facility, clinically eligible, but still need some services, what happens then? Who wants to take that one?
Well, our assessor will create a service request and provide that information in just a comprehensive packet that is sent over to Carol for additional support.
Okay.
Right. Once the referral comes to us, as care managers, we are assigned the responsibility of identifying the needs of these individuals, consumers, how those needs are being met, and what needs are still unmet, in a nutshell.
Okay.
Both the NFCE and the NFI consumer can come to us for community services. If the consumer is NFCE, we will assist them through our assessment process, our care management needs assessment process, and refer them to the county assistance office for eligibility determination for aging waiver program, which is funded through the medical assistance programs.
Okay.
If the consumer is NFI, we will complete the needs assessment and and we can, depending upon the outcome of that, enroll them directly into home and community-based services. If a consumer is sent over to the County Assistance Office as NFCE and the County Assistance Office determines that they are not eligible after completing that application process, they come back to us and we can then look at offering home and community-based services in home. Right. We have a couple of programs that we offer. One is called the Options Program.
Options, okay.
Yes, and another is called the Family Caregiver Support Program.
All right, so let's stay with options first and tell us a little bit about what that means. What are those options, Carol?
And how do they get there?
Yes,
I'm going to back up a little bit.
Okay.
The needs assessment tool actually includes the information that the assessor has completed on the level of care determination. Okay. The care manager would contact the client, set up the appointment, and when they complete the needs assessment, they're going to be confirming the information that was gathered by the assessor.
Okay.
Seniors can sometimes change quickly. Their health can sometimes get better or deteriorate. So as they're confirming the information, there may be some changes that have occurred since the assessor has been there.
Okay.
In addition to that, we're looking at all of the what we call activities of daily living. How are they bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting, transferring, those kinds of activities. Are they in need of help to do that? Do they have someone currently helping them do that? Do they need more help with any of those? In addition, we're looking at what we call instrumental activities of daily living, things like grocery shopping, meal preparation, doing laundry. How are those things getting done? Does the individual need help, additional help with that? Are there unmet needs in those areas?
Okay.
We're always going to look to other resources first. That's a requirement that we have to utilize informal supports, family, friends,
sometimes neighbors, church members.
Other paid sources of assistance. We would look there first to help build those supports for people. We also, all of our programs have a means test, including, of course, the referrals that we send to the Department of Public Welfare, now known as the Department of Human Services. Our programs, the Options Program, has a financial test to it, so we're going to be gathering information like that. Ultimately, if they qualify for in-home services through Options, we could offer a care plan that involves adult daycare services, personal care services, an emergency response system.
Help I've fallen and they can't get up.
Exactly, those emergency buttons. Care management is an Options service.
Kind of help to coordinate some of those things ongoing.
Yes.
Okay.
We can also, of course, help set up home delivered meals. We can also set up some what we call supplemental services, things like homemaker or home support that just provides some homemaking services in the home.
Okay, good. I think that's important because some folks, as you said, some are all alone out there, and so even having the care management piece of helping to not only set those up and arrange it, but periodically making sure that things are still working, things are still appropriate, the needs are the same or have they changed, to keep that in mind. And others have those supports that you mentioned, and probably those things can be met but still need some of those other key services that can't be provided, or just because of whatever time and the availability to provide the real key assistance, care assistance that folks need, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay. We don't have a lot of time, and I don't want to miss the other program that you mentioned about the family caregiver. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the options before I ask you about the family caregiver? Explain that.
I think it's important for consumers to realize that everyone pays a little bit of something toward the cost of their service. which is why financial verifications are so important to us to know. We are charged with serving the neediest individuals, so everyone's paying something toward the cost of their services, and options is a limited amount of money that we can spend on services. So
Sure. Obviously, all the funds are limited. You know, there's not endless funds, so you obviously have to deem them, qualified, and that has to be set.
Right.
Okay.
The Family Caregiver Support Program is really, the focus is really on helping to support that caregiver to meet the needs of the care receiver, rather than providing services ourselves directly or funding directly for those services for the care receiver. We reimburse the caregiver for what they're already buying or purchasing in terms of services or supplies. Maybe they're paying for respite time so that they can take a break, or maybe they're purchasing over-the-counter supplies, incontinence products.
I was going to say, we certainly know incontinence products can be quite expensive. Sure.
Yes, for those care receivers.
Okay, so I'm going to review that again, because I think you've said it exactly the way it's understandable to me, but I think we've all had questions asked of us about the family caregiver, in that it's not somebody who says, hey, I've been caregiving or helping my person, relative, grandmother, whoever it is, and I'd like to come to your agency and be paid to give care through the Family Caregiver Support Program. That is not what happens with this family caregiver. So tell me again, it's to?
Okay, it's to reimburse the caregiver who is already providing daily hands-on care, to reimburse them for hiring helpers. They cannot hire relatives as helpers, but if they're hiring maybe a neighbor or a friend or someone from an agency, they're hiring an agency to do this, it's to reimburse for that. Maybe they're utilizing an adult daycare program, and they're paying out of
costs, obviously,
and they're paying out of pocket for that. They can give us the receipts for their spending, and we can authorize reimbursement to them. There's a limit. There's a cap.
I was just going to say, I'll bet there's a cap to all of that.
There's absolutely a cap
do you have that,
to all of that.
Do you have that with us to give us that cap?
About $400, would be, and under the options program, about $765 would be the top. But so we're not talking about reimbursing for a lot of services and supplies, and it's really their actual spending, and we calculate that amount based upon what they're utilizing and what they're planning to utilize under the program.
Okay, all right, good. Anything else? Before we wrap it up here, would either of you two have one particular thing that you'd like to make sure that we are aware of? Anything that we want to clarify, or just make sure we don't forget to say?
I think only to emphasize that we are consumer driven. We will we're able to move forward if the consumer is in agreement.
And the consumers make choices. They need to make the choice.
Okay. Excellent. That's great. Thank you. I hope that we've enlightened you a little bit more about how you can receive some key services in-home for those folks that qualify, that are eligible, that meet the criteria through an assessment process and a financial gathering of information for some of the key programs that are specifically funded or assisting with funding and help with those individuals who are older adults who need some assistance in their home, would like to remain in their home, in the community with those services for as long as it's possible. And as they said, that it's consumer driven, as well as some choices being made by the consumer. So I hope that we've enlightened you a little bit more about some of the home services through our series of aging programs and services that have been provided to you by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. Please remember to give us a call at our agency at 610-478-6500, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions, provide you with more direction, guidance, resources, or available programs and services.